It is infrequent, in my experience, that a lot of people in government just don't come across as authentic, sincere, honest. Well, I had the pleasure of meeting a gentleman a week ago at Mar-a-Lago, actually. He's a member of the Freedom Caucus, and he's one of the most genuine, straightforward people in public service that I've ever had the pleasure to meet. And yesterday was his birthday. Congressman Self, welcome to The Truth.
Thank you so much, John. Delighted to be here.
Well, it's so nice to meet someone my own age because we are starting to be fewer and fewer. But happy birthday, and we really appreciate you coming on with us. So I know our time's limited, and we've got a lot to talk about. Let's start with the elephant in the room, and that would be the war that is being waged in Iran right now. Let me just also state, or for our listeners and viewers, you have had a distinguished career, and you have been selfless in pursuit of your career. Unlike myself, who's an entrepreneur and just a greedy capitalist, you've given yourself for 35, 40 years to public service. You were in the Army for 25 years. You achieved the rank of lieutenant colonel. Where all did you serve? Were you in combat? Were you on the field?
I had multiple deployments into combat zones, starting with Grenada back in 1983 when the 82nd invaded Grenada. And then I finished up in Afghanistan and in the Gulf for Iraqi freedom. So spanning 20 years, I guess that is.
Well,
30 years. 30 years.
It gets to be a cliche and it seems to lose its impact, but I want you to know how serious I am about thanking you for your service. And you have put yourself in harm's way to protect our freedoms. And I'm not blowing smoke. I'm not trying to butter you up, but I just really appreciate it. And, you know, we had the pleasure of having dinner together a couple of weeks ago for the Freedom Caucus. And I have made a donation today in your honor. And I do that as recognition of your selflessness and your service to our country. So thank you.
Thank you, John. Thanks for doing that. Thanks for supporting our Freedom Caucus candidates. It's really important.
Well, I told the nice lady that invited me that I just finished building this house and I'm dirt poor and I don't have the money to go. And she said, well, come as our guest. And after the dinner, I walked up to her and I said, okay, it worked. I'm making a donation because you all are some of the most inspiring people for our audience. Tell us about the Freedom Caucus real quick.
Well, the Freedom Caucus, we consider ourselves the conscience of the Republican conference because we want President Trump's America First agenda. The problem is the speaker, the leadership has to put a bill on the floor that can get 218 votes. But so our job is to move those bills in the America First direction. What can we do to improve them? What can we do to enact President Trump's America First agenda? What can we do better? That's what we want to do.
Well, we need you. And when you say that you have to have the speaker put the bills on the House, I don't think you're being disparaging toward the speaker. I think you're just giving us a dose of reality that we live in a political system and we don't always get to have our way on every issue. Is that the inference that I understood correctly?
Absolutely. Mike Johnson is doing a magnificent job in a very difficult, almost an impossible situation with such a narrow majority. So we are trying to help him move bills toward the America First agenda. That's what we see as our mission in Congress. Save the Republic. So yeah, very important. But no, I'm not just disparaging Mike Johnson at all.
No, and I wasn't trying to put words in your mouth either. I was just clarifying it for our listeners. But before we get into it, you serve on the Veteran Affairs Committee. How do you like the secretary for Veteran Affairs, Doug Collins?
Listen, Doug Collins is about the straightest shooter you're going to see. And he doesn't take any guff from anybody. He's done very good work paring down the VA, the Veterans Administration, and yet he's not dealing and he's not cutting frontline care providers. We need to be very careful with that. He is streamlining the organization, but he's not cutting frontline providers. Our veterans need to know that. He is trying to make the VA better for our veterans.
Well, I can just tell you, I've known Doug Collins for a long time. I have such admiration for him. I consider him a friend. And when I ran for Attorney General in Georgia, he did not endorse me, but he was very helpful and he gave me real practical advice that was meaningful to me. And so I have a lot of, I have a great admiration for Doug Collins, and glad to hear you report that. You also work on export controls, Sharia-free American Caucus. Boy, do I want to hear about that. And you do wear your religion not on your sleeve, but you're not reluctant to tell people that you are a Christian, and you conduct yourself in Congress based on Christian values. And I certainly applaud that.
Thank you. Yeah, the Sharia-free America Caucus is now at 59 members. Basically, less than 3 months, we have 59 members. It's phenomenal growth. We had Tommy Robinson from the UK tell us about what's happening in the UK. I think we had 12 members of the caucus there on a very, very busy day. So we're moving forward. We've got bills on the floor, more bills to introduce. So we're hoping to make an impact, to educate our colleagues, and certainly to educate the American people on the dangers of Sharia.
Well, when you say Sharia, are you speaking about the Muslim faith and Sharia law? That I'm conflicted on. The fact of the matter is, I don't know. I do know some Muslims, and the ones that I know are very nice people, and I don't think that they want to kill me. But the perception is that if you're Muslim and you subscribe to the Quran, that you believe that all infidels must be either converted or eliminated. That's what the narrative is. I did go to the penultimate source of knowledge this morning and asked Grok about it, and Grok told me that really 88% of Muslims do not believe in violence and do not want to kill people that do not subscribe to their religion. So can you help us understand this question?
Yeah, I can. In this case, I think Grok's got it almost completely backwards because we have polls showing that 70+% of all Muslims believe Sharia should be the law of the land. So let's talk about the legal aspect of it, because that's the way we approach it. Sharia, even in its more minor forms, excuse me, has elements that are incompatible with U.S. law. We'll start with the simple ones, like dogs are haram. They are forbidden in Sharia. Americans care a lot about their pets, their pet dogs. And when they tell you you can't walk your dog on a public sidewalk because it insults them, that's not right. Women are second-class citizens in Sharia. Their testimony is worth half of a man's. They can be beaten. Don't break their bones, but they can be beaten to make them obey. We don't believe in 6-year-old marriage. Marrying your daughter off at 6 or 9 years old. And then you get to the more dramatic aspects of Sharia. If you don't convert to Islam, you can either pay a tax, the jizya, or you are subject to death, as you say. But those moderate Muslims, if they don't then abide by all of the elements of Sharia, when the jihadists, when the Islamists take over, they're under the same penalty of death. So the Quran is what governs Sharia, not what the moderate Muslims, the secular Muslims we'll call them, are doing in America. The Quran comes directly from Muhammad, and it is their law, and it is very draconian. So we approach this from the legal standpoint that Sharia is mainly, and here's the key point, Sharia is mainly a substitutionary, draconian, tyrannical legal system with a thin veneer of religion. But that's what Sharia is.
Well, that's a scary proposition because, I just so naively subscribed to what Rodney King said 30 years ago. Can't we just all get along? How can you possibly live in a world with peace if a good percentage of it want to kill other people?
Well, we've got 1,400 years of example of what Sharia, what Islam, mainstream Islam does when it comes into a country. Egypt was a Christian nation for 600 years. Lebanon was meant to be a Christian enclave in the Middle East. as recently as several decades ago. These are examples of where Sharia takes over. It intends to be the dominant political system. And frankly, they are called to make it that as they grow in power.
So let's apply that now to the war that is being waged in Iran. Is that what this is about?
No, this is about two things. First of all, it's the support for terrorism that Iran has done for 47 years once the Shia Islamic tyrannical government took over. And the secondly is their nuclear program. So those are the two elements. Now, the regime in Iran has basically three priorities. First of all is regime survival. Obviously, we're cutting into the regime leadership dramatically. Secondly was the protection of their nuclear program. And thirdly were their proxies around the world, Hamas, Hezbollah, amongst others, that carry out the terror attacks on behalf of the Iranian ayatollahs and the government. So that's what this is about. Now, we've pretty much done a very good job taking care of the leadership. Look, John, in my 25 years, I worked in the Middle East, I was stationed in the Middle East, and I deployed multiple times to the Middle East. So this is near and dear to my heart because Iran has a 5,000-year-old civilization that is not Islamic. They would love to get back to it. That's what happened in 1979 when the Shia Islamic tyrannical regime took over. They now have had a 47-year reign of terrorism. They've been building their nuclear program. They have a lot of 60% uranium that we need to find and secure because it's a very short period of time. It sounds like a lot, 60% to 90% weapons grade, but it's not. If they have the centrifuges left, it might be a very short period of time.
Well, I lived through the Iranian hostage crisis, and I'm still bitter about it, frankly. I mean, they took 53, I believe was the number, of our diplomats in Tehran and kept them in captivity for over 2 years. It cost Jimmy Carter his reelection, which probably was not a terribly bad thing. But I do think that if you want to be critical about Ronald Reagan on anything, it might be that he neglected to do what President Trump is now doing, and that is holding Iran accountable for their terrorism and their aggression and mistreatment of their foes.
Well, if you actually go back to it, Jimmy Carter actually encouraged the Ayatollah to take over because the Shah had fallen out of favor so far.
Right. Yeah.
Jimmy Carter actually encouraged that. Now, if you go to the Reagan Library, you'll figure out real quickly that his first 100 days were very busy. We talked about gas prices. We talked about firing ATF, on and on. So he had a very busy first 100 days. But you're right. I wish we had nipped that snake in the nest when it was a baby.
We certainly had every reason to do it back then, and I think that it would have spared us of 50 years of continued terrorism. So just make no mistake that I do support what the country's policy is and what President Trump and many members of Congress have encouraged him to do, and the State Department, the Department of War. Still, you know, the name of this show is The Truth, and I don't look for Republican causes to support, and I don't look to condemn Democrats, but I do look to discern the truth. And so I think it's only right that we consider Joe Kent, not consider him, poor choice of words, but I want to understand why he would behave the way that he has. If we could, let's roll a clip first from him in 2024 and then him most recently.
What do you think the immediate and then longer term effects of a war with Iran would be on the United States?
Immediately, it would be very bloody. I have no doubt that we could probably defeat some of their air defense and go in there and have another shock and awe campaign. But again, like we saw how the shock and awe campaign in Iraq really didn't actually work in the long run. So I have no doubt that we'd have some immediate results that people would cheer about here in the United States. But Iran, Persia, has always been an empire. It's been around longer than any of the other players in the modern Middle East right now, and they are not going anywhere. If we get deeply involved and deeply entangled with Iran, we are playing right into China's hands, because China would like nothing more than for us to be committing our military industrial base to a war in Eastern Europe, in Ukraine, and then to be committing our conventional military power, our blood and our treasure, back in the Middle East. That will make the Pacific, our actual border, extremely vulnerable to Chinese aggression, or China will simply just watch us bleed out economically as we bleed out on the battlefield on these couple different theaters. It's absolute insanity. It's opening up Pandora's box. And again, for what gain to the American people?
All right. And here is Joe Kent before Congress just, I believe, earlier this week or last week.
Iran posed no imminent threat to our nation. How did you reach that conclusion?
I think this is key. I mean, this would be more challenging to explain had the Secretary of State, the President, and the Speaker of the House not come out and said that we conducted this attack at this time because the Israelis were about to do so. So that takes away the argument that there was an imminent threat, as in Iran was planning to attack us immediately. That just simply did not exist.
So that was not Congress. That was Tucker Carlson. My apologies. So where is he coming from? I mean, this guy is not a lunatic. I mean, he was generally pretty highly regarded. He was the director of counterterrorism, the Counterterrorism Center. So he has some credibility, but he resigned in protest over the war in Iran. Can you make heads or tails of it?
No, not really, Joe Kent. Obviously, he's now been accused of leaking classified documents, but he does have a lot of credibility. I liked his first interview better because, frankly, if you look at what we've done now, we've cut off Venezuela oil from China. We've now, Strait of Hormuz, we don't get much oil through the Strait of Hormuz. China still does. So we've cut off a lot of the oil to China. And China's economy is not doing well now anyway. So his first interview, he laid out a very severe set of circumstances that is not going to happen. Now let's go to the war in Iran. Yes, we cannot invade Iran. It's a huge country. It's built like a bowl. The mountain ranges are actually on the outside of the country, making it very difficult to invade. I was involved in Op Plan 1004 in the 80s with the 82nd, looking at this very issue. So we do not want to invade Iran. So in my mind, the two things that we need to do now is we need to get the Strait of Hormuz open, and we need to get the oil flowing to the world's economy so that the world's economy does not go down. And it could. If oil goes to $150 a barrel or so, it could. The second thing is I would love to find their 60% uranium and secure it. That's a very difficult proposition, though. Even if they only have 200 pounds, that's a lot of uranium. It will be in very heavy canisters, so you'll need heavy lift to get it out. But those are the two things that I want us to accomplish, or want us to look at. Now, the leadership. We've done a great job on the leadership, and we will continue to do that. But I do not want us to invade Iran with major ground forces. I think we can invade about 3 islands there in the Gulf and in the Strait and control the Strait. The uranium is a more difficult issue.
In the waging of this war against Iran, I do not remember in my lifetime where our military has actually taken out the leadership of the opposition of the country that we're at war with. I mean, it didn't happen in World War II until the very end. But we didn't take out Hitler. Hitler, we're told, committed suicide. It didn't happen in Vietnam. I don't know about Afghanistan. Did we kill the leader of Afghanistan? I don't think so.
No, but in Libya, remember El Dorado Canyon in 1986, where we sent the F-111s into Libya. They couldn't fly across Europe because our allies wouldn't give them clearance, so they had to go through Gibraltar to attack Libya. We killed his daughter. We didn't get him then, but eventually we did. And he
Gaddafi,
correct.
Yes.
So that's the one example I can think of off the top of my head. But in this case, the leadership is so important to the regime in Iran. But they also have a very disintegrated command and control structure. So they operate independently. It's very dispersed and independently operated in many cases. So this is what makes the attacking the leadership and continuing to go down the line so difficult, because they do operate independently.
Well, and they're also fanatical. I mean, you know, it's hard to ignore someone when they're chanting death to America and when they publicly stated that they want to obliterate Israel. I mean, how do you ignore that? And how do you ignore them if you're going to attack the country? I mean, I think it's somewhat unprecedented that we have removed all the leadership, and we're not talking about one or two people. I mean, we're talking about quite a few people, but it is war, and war is hell. And so maybe that's just a consequence.
Well, and the next question we need to ask, John, is what is the end state? Do we have an end state? Do we have something that we are moving toward? Because I don't think the American people want another forever war of the 20 years in the Middle East. So what I would like to hear from the administration is, what do they envision? It might not be exact, but what do they envision as the end state in this conflict in Iran?
Well, I think there's so many questions on the minds of the American people, because we are living in really unprecedented times right now. And don't take anything I say as a negative at all, but I am in search of the truth. But what President Trump is doing is just phenomenal. I mean, it seems like he's straightening things out that we've been wringing our hands over for 50 years. And so I applaud that. But it is very messy in the process, predictably so. And that's part of the cost to him politically of having done these things. But I want to run this clip with Tucker and former Professor Brett Weinstein talking about kind of a snapshot of where we are in the world today and our U.S. foreign policy.
We don't have an FBI. We know that because things that need to be thoroughly investigated obviously aren't, whether that's the assassination attempt in Butler, whether it's the Zorro Ranch that never got searched that Epstein had, or the Charlie Kirk assassination.
Yep.
Now, all I know about the Charlie Kirk assassination is that I've been handed a story that doesn't add up. I don't know why it doesn't add up, but the fact that we didn't get to the bottom of it in some way, that we got a compelling explanation to what happened, worries me for the following reason. Now, I didn't know Charlie well. We were becoming friends, and I feel confident that that would have continued and progressed rapidly, but I didn't know him all that well. But we were teamed up on a project to essentially compel the president of the danger of the mRNA shots. But that meant that I had contact with him, and I knew something of what he thought. I know you knew him well. Even his public-facing side was very clear about his concerns about an attack on Iran. He was not only very clear about his concerns, but he was very knowledgeable about the hazards. He would have been a formidable voice at this moment.
So what do you think, Congressman? I was home from the fourth grade when President Kennedy was assassinated. That event has stuck with me for 62 years. I've read everything I could read. I've watched the videos. I've watched the documentaries. I've listened to the pundits. It is my considered opinion that our own government killed the 35th president of the United States. I shouldn't say the government. I think rogue elements within the government, but one of those rogue elements may have been Lyndon Baines Johnson and the head of the CIA. I mean, that has caused me to become cynical and to question everything. Is Weinstein onto something here? Is there a linkage, do you believe?
I don't know who killed Charlie Kirk behind the scenes. I will tell you, Charlie Kirk was killed for one reason. He was successful. He was mobilizing the younger generation to be involved in the very foundation of the United States, the virtues, the disciplines that founded our great nation. And we were starting to see a revival of the youngest generation in America that was then going to pull us back to the virtues, to the foundations of our great nation. That's why Charlie Kirk was killed. He was successful. he reached the younger generation. Because, and back to Iran, 7 presidents have said they're going to do something about Iran. Trump is the first one.
I agree.
Look at Venezuela. It was not just oil. It was a hotbed of all of our adversaries had locations in Venezuela. President Trump is upending the world situation. He's demanding that our European allies spend more on their own defense. So he is changing the world. But I'm back to Charlie Kirk. I think he was killed because he was successful. And frankly, President Trump has undergone at least 2 attempted assassinations.
Well, you and my wife are on the same page. That I knew Charlie. I was not close to Charlie, but I had his cell phone. He had mine. We would see each other a couple of times a year, and we would always have congenial conversations. I spent an hour and a half with him privately a year and a half ago, and it was a moment that I will savor for the rest of my life. He was the smartest person I have ever met, and he was also a patriot, and he was a disciple of Christ and had a strong belief in God and could quote the Bible better than most pastors that I've known. I just have unbounded admiration for him. And so it was a sucker punch to me, as it was to most people, when someone took him out. And I turned to my wife and I said, why would anyone want to kill Charlie? And she said, because he was having an impact. He was making a difference. And that's a pretty sad commentary, I think.
And think about the impact he was having. Young people were understanding
Absolutely.
the Christian faith,
Yeah.
understanding why our nation is founded on as disciples of Christ, as followers of Christ with a Christian civilization, that our laws are based on the Bible. We can't forget that. Why do we have a president that's supposed to be a native born? It's in the Old Testament. On and on and on.
Yes. Well, I will end that conversation just by saying I'm not satisfied with the answers that we've been given. I don't believe that we've had a real investigation, and I think that the American people deserve it, and I would like to see that happen. We can handle the truth. Just let us have the truth. And I think that if we do get the truth on things, that we will make much better decisions as a country and as a culture. But it seems like when the chips are really important that we're denied the proof, and that it's a problem for me personally. All right, we're out of time. I want to be respectful of your time. Can I just ask you real quick? This is all this stuff is happening at a really bad time politically. You know, oil is $95 a barrel on Friday, and the stock market is down 10% since its high of 50,000, and the midterms are looming. Can the Republicans rebound, and can we win the midterms? Because I'll just tell you straight up, I think if Biden had stayed in the race and miraculously somehow won, which I think would have been a real long shot, or if Kamala Harris had won, we would have lost this country. I believe that 100%. And similarly, I am really concerned if one of these lunatic liberal leftists can get control of the United States Congress. It is really scary. How can you give us some optimism?
Well, yes, the headwinds are always against the ruling party in the midterms, always. But President Trump has rescued us twice now, once from Hillary Clinton, once from Kamala. I guess we'll consider her the candidate. So he's saved this country twice. Now, the midterms, we need to get the Iran war done with. We need to have a success there. The IRS returns, the federal income tax returns that are coming out are good. People are doing well. We need them to start feeling that, to believing that things are getting better. Inflation is still high. We've got to continue to bring that down. I think the housing market is one of the keys to this. We do not need the Elizabeth Warren housing bill that is in the Senate that's got a bunch of socialist policies. We need to get the rates down so that our mature homeowners can find something else with a reasonable interest rate so the first-time home buyers can move up. We also need to get more illegals out of the country because they are depressing the housing market. We're 4 million units short across America. We get those 11 million illegals out, that will help the housing market. So the housing market, I think, is key. The income tax refunds are key, and getting inflation down closer to the mark is key. Those three things will help us in the midterms.
Colonel Self, Judge Self, Congressman Self, and husband and father. What a life well lived. You're my hero. Have a great rest of your weekend. Happy birthday. And thank you so much for coming on The Truth Today.
Thank you, John. Thank you.